my first cookbook review because I love gardening and I love cooking, and the way that those combine is in the kitchen.
So many books to read, a whole life ahead of me.
Hello, my name is Alexis and welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing a cookbook review. I'm so excited for this because I love cooking and it just seems like the most natural thing to do to start doing cookbook reviews because I love gardening and I love cooking, and the way that those combine is in the kitchen. The first book that I have here is The Blue Zone's Kitchen. So this book is by Dan Buettner and it's photographed by David McLean. If you've never heard of blue zones before, blue zones are essentially the areas on the earth where people live the longest and the healthiest. They don't develop diseases, they don't get arthritis, they don't get dementia, they don't get a lot of these diseases, heart diseases that we get, they don't have strokes that a lot of us have here in non-blue zone areas. If you already know what blue zones are and you just want to go straight to the content of the cookbook, I'll just put a timestamp down below and you can do that. This guy, Dan Buettner, has been doing research on blue zones for at least 10 years at this point. He's been doing a lot of research. He has a lot of papers. He's done a TED Talk. I'll link some of those down below. I remember the first time I had heard of him talking about blue zones was his TED Talk. The main message I got from it was like, oh, you need to eat more beans. You should be eating beans like almost every day, if not like 3 times a week. You just need to be eating beans. Then I got this book and learned that there was a lot more to it than that. There's 100 recipes in here, and the 5 regions he references. Now there's a lot more blue regions than just these 5, but these are the 5 he goes with for this book. And I'm gonna scoot over so you see his spell. He mentions Costa Rica, California, Greece, Japan, and Italy. The actual places, I can't pronounce all of their names correctly, so I'm gonna try my best. Sardinia, Italy, Okinawa, Japan, Nicoya, Costa Rica, Icaria, Greece, and Loma Linda, California. He talks about more than just the foods they eat here. He talks about their lifestyle, which I think is very important because I feel like a lot of cookbooks talk about just the food, and that's really cool, and I like that. I mean, I'm all about that. I'm here, right? It's nice to sometimes have a lifestyle that goes along with it, especially when you're cooking specific regions' food. I feel like whenever you are doing a cookbook that's specifically to a region, they do sometimes include lifestyle, but I like how he incorporates it here. What got me back into this was I saw a video by Hitomi, and she was talking about Okinawa and like how some of her family is from Okinawa, and she wanted to cook some of their foods. She cooked the potatoes and the Japanese sweet potatoes. I'd never had a Japanese sweet potato, but she did actual Okinawa sweet potatoes, which are the white ones that are purple inside. The only ones that I could get my hands on are Japanese sweet potatoes, which are purple on the outside and white on the inside. I cooked them for the first time, and she just like added like a little bit of seasoning. They looked good and they were creamy, and I was like, there's no way you didn't add milk and butter and all this stuff that you typically have to add to like basic mashed potatoes. But sure enough, they were amazing with nothing, and I'm getting off track, but that's what I do here. So I'm gonna link, if I can find it and remember which one it was, her video where she originally starts talking about the blue zones and Okinawa and all of that, because I got some value out of it, and she's such a humble spirit. Again, I'm still talking about cookbooks in general. I'm not specifically talking much about this book yet, so I will leave a timestamp. But I love cookbooks and I read a lot of cookbooks, and this is the first one that I'm making a video on, and depending on how I feel editing this, I might just make this a regular thing. I want to. Once I got really excited about it, I checked out like 8 cookbooks from the library because I don't know why. There are a lot of reasons to love cookbooks. I love learning about different people and trying to add some of their lifestyle into my lifestyle. You may not get to go there physically, but you can eat like you're there, and that's fun too. You know, you might discover something, a new way to cook something, a new ingredient that you've never used before, and you might just find that you want to incorporate that into your everyday cooking life, and you get to experience some of the history and the culture. Food is art, and it's expression, and it's beautiful, and I love it. I rent the cookbooks. I'm not actually buying them. I got this one from the library. I'm not gonna buy these. I have to try actually cooking them, the recipes I want to cook, and then write down the rest. That means I have to actually take it seriously. For me, if I check out a book, I'll actually read it, versus if I buy a book, I'm like, oh, well, yeah, you know, one day I'll get to it, and then that day never comes. Checking out a book holds me more accountable. I love handwriting recipes anyway. Now we're gonna get into the actual cookbook itself. So I just wanna kind of do like a pros and cons, and then mention some of my favorite recipes from this book. So the pros, I love the introduction. I'm just gonna kind of show you a little bit without breaking copyright. So most cookbooks, when I get to the introduction, I don't actually sit and read it. I just kind of, like, I'm checking this out for the recipes. I'm not really interested in what you have to say. I might read the first paragraph. But this one, I read the whole thing. And there was a lot of actual really good information in it. He talks about what makes these places so unique and kind of gives you a summary before he gives you any recipes. Here's your little handy dandy map of the blue zones. You can see it. He gives you like a little bullet points of like cooking tips, and I want to read them out to you just because I feel like they were helpful to kind of get these bullet point summaries. So use fewer ingredients, add cruciferous vegetables, make beans tasty, finish dishes with olive oil, supplement with fresh herbs and spices. Fiber is more important than we thought. Enjoy your meals with red wine. And then he goes into these food value guidelines here. And these were really helpful for me. They're numbered, so I'm just going to read that in a little expert from it. In these pages, we've distilled more than 150 dietary surveys of the world's longest-lived people to reveal the secrets of a strong longevity regimen. These 11 simple guidelines reflect how the world's longest-lived people ate for most of their lives. So number 1, and I'm not going to read the blurb for all of these, I'm just going to read you the title for what they are, because you gotta get the book. Number 1, ensure that your diet is 90 to 100% plant-based. Number 2, retreat from meat. Number 3, go easy on fish. Number 4, reduce dairy. Number 5, cut down on eggs. Number 6, eat a daily dose of beans. Daily, not several times a week, daily. That was my misconception or misunderstanding. Slash sugar. This is something I do want to get more into and mention a little bit that I've learned about sugar and what's helping me cut back on my sugar intake, even though I ate like a bunch of chocolate this morning. Cane sugar. As soon as I learned that sugar is what cancer eats in the body, I took all of my sugar and put it like out of my kitchen so that if I wanted it, I had to go somewhere else to get it, and I just kind of put it with my mason jars and my extra food storage. And I put like coconut sugar and turbinado sugar, which I know is cane sugar, but it's not. I don't think it's as dangerous for me as cane sugar, because I don't just reach for turbinado sugar. And now I just have like stevia and monk fruit and other sweeteners in my pantry that I'm going to use instead of cane sugar. Number 8, snack on nuts. I do this in granola, but I learned a little bit other recipes. Sour on bread, which he just means like eat sourdough bread. Go whole, eating whole foods, eating things we recognize. Drink mostly water, but there are exceptions to this. Water, tea, and red wine are the 3 exceptions. If you're not drinking water, drink these other things because of all of the health benefits to them. And then those are his 11 things, and then we get into our first region, which is Sardinia. Another thing I liked about this cookbook was you get to learn about all the unique dishes that they make in these different places that I've never been to, and places that you don't really see a whole cookbook about, or you're just not like looking up recipes on Pinterest and just stumbling across these random ones. Maybe you do, but I haven't. And I like that even though he gave you all of these really unique foods and really unique recipes and ingredients, he also gave you alternatives. There's lemonade with chan seeds recipes in here for Costa Rica, and I've never seen chan seeds in the grocery store, and he said you could replace them with chia seeds, which I have a bunch, and I wasn't about to not use them, so I used chia seeds instead of chan seeds, and I think I would have just skipped the recipe entirely if he hadn't provided that alternative ingredient. And then the recipes are simple, which is a pro and a con. On the pro side, it's simple, which means you don't have to go invest in all of these ingredients or cooking utensils or all of these fancy things to make a recipe and still enjoy it and have it be somewhat authentic. At the end of the book, there's a lot of cool tools, mainly for your like American readers. There's this metric conversions chart here, and it has weight conversions, volume conversions, and then oven conversions. I might just scan this just to have in my kitchen because I don't have something like this, and sometimes I see this a lot, like 16 ounces is 1 pound. We get that, but it's 454 grams. I know that because I look at packages all day at work, all these other ones like tablespoons and teaspoons and cups to milliliters. What? Fahrenheit to Celsius. Yeah, that's something I have to look up all the time. So that's really helpful. And then he has this summary of ingredients, like the major ingredients. He calls it the top longevity ingredients from each region. I'm trying to go to. Although I like this setup, I think it would have been more meaningful to have an actual index of ingredients, but that's a con and I'll get into that when we get there. I like this because when you're trying to think of like what you have or what you want to make, you can just flip here and see some basic ingredients. I feel like a lot of Americans could easily do the Loma Linda recipes just because they're all mainly ingredients we already have at home. The major thing I really liked about this was when you get to, so he has 5 chapters, but the chapters each just a section. So when you get to a section, it has like, before you even get to the recipes, it has pictures of it. It has a little bit about like the history and the background and the people, and it even features at least one centennial. The one in this one I think was a mother-daughter-grandmother duo. So this one, he has this lady down here. She is 89 years old. Beautiful photography, definitely working. And then I like all the, I just love the organization of it so much. You can't really see it here, I don't think, but it says flavor profile. These flavor pairings help form the framework for Okinawa's most popular dishes. You can use these compatible flavors to help enhance a variety of different meals. And then he just has like different ways to combine different things. So it says ginger soy sauce, ginger scallions, dashi soy sauce scallions, miso dashi tofu. Just like different ways to combine different things to get the flavor profile. I like that. But my favorite part, I think, is actually seeing what a centennial, like the little excerpt from each centennial, like how old they are from each region. The one from Costa Rica was this guy who's like been doing the same lifestyle, the same morning routine for every day of his life since he was probably 10, and he was like 105 years old, and just perfectly agile, healthy, not dealing with a lot of the diseases we deal with, and that's really motivating for me because I don't want to get old and not be able to do basic things. The way our society is teaching us to age by caring about money and things that don't actually matter, it's setting us up to go that way, and I don't want to go that way. I don't want my life to end up the way a lot of older people are ending up, and I'm going to try and do what I can to change that. So now we're at the cons. Unfortunately, I have a few for this book, even though I made a lot of recipes that I really liked, and that will be the next section of the recipes that I took from this book that I will be incorporating into my life. There's still quite a few cons, and there are simple, like maybe I'm just nitpicky, but there's simple enough fixes that, you know, if he had had a few people review his book, he could have prevented this. Biggest con is that some of the recipes are not descriptive enough. The biggest example I've had with this is I tried to make the fried plantains, and he specifically calls it the green fried plantains. But I've never cooked plantains before. I've never even bought them myself before. So going from that to cooking with them, there seems to be a lot more background that you would need to do that. I had to consult the internet, which, if you're using a cookbook as your representation for that food and that meal, consulting the internet is not ideal. I don't want to have to look at someone else's take on a recipe, on how to make a recipe, because then I would just read that other person's recipe. It means the recipe itself isn't complete and it's missing components. It'd be nice to have more descriptions and accurate photos, because the photo he had was in like one step of the process of making fried plantains, and I kept wondering, are mine gold enough? Does this make sense? Am I doing this correctly? I didn't. I don't think I did because I was not satisfied. So I ended up looking up a different recipe for plantains, on how to cook plantains. It said to use black plantains. Don't use the green ones because the sugars aren't ripe. You want to use as darker colored plantains as you can get your hands on. And this was a news flash for me. I didn't know that. And so the first time I made them, there were still like bits of the peel attached to them, and they didn't come out right. They didn't. But when I finally consulted a different recipe, I found out that I didn't make them with the ripe enough bananas, even though this recipe specifically called for green plantains. But that's my mistake. Had to learn from it. And that's another reason I like making these recipes before I turn this back into the library, because I can troubleshoot them and be like, is that really what it said to do? Is that really the best course of action? So like I said, not enough pictures or the wrong pictures. Let's see if I can find the plantains. So this picture looks really great, and you're like, wow, they're just golden, they're just slightly crispy looking, but there's a point when you have to crush them and then fry them a second time. That's where I would have liked to actually see a photo, or maybe both photos, to be like, this is what they look like after the first fry, this is what they look like afterwards. Definitely if this was a blog, there would be all of those photos, and maybe that's what I'm used to. And maybe I'm spoiled. So yeah, the recipes, that specific one was kind of a fail. Had to learn from my mistakes. Some of the recipes are not as flavorful as I would want them to be. There was, one of the Okinawa recipes was using kabocha pumpkin to make a soup. I didn't even try to make this soup because I already have a kabocha soup recipe that I really like. This one doesn't call for like all the flavorful ingredients. It doesn't call for using sake to add flavor, or using a little bit of like sugar to add flavor. Even though we know like we don't want to consume a bunch of sugar, a lot of Asian foods use like sugar, spicy sweet. Probably the biggest con and biggest oversight is that there's no index at the back. This was a problem because when I was looking for this soup that I saw, it had fennel in it, and it had peas in it, and it had artichokes in it. It's this soup right here. I made this twice, and it was amazing both times, but when I was trying to find it in here, I couldn't figure out where it was because there's no index at the back. It just has the top longevity ingredients. So I saw the fennel, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm pretty sure it has fennel in it, so I'm gonna go to that region, which was the Greece region. And so I was looking through Greece, and I couldn't see like anything that had like fennel artichoke soup, or fennel peas and artichoke soup, or peas and artichoke soup, like anything like that in the title. And it turns out the title was very non-descriptive, and it was just like Ikarian soup. There was like 4 other soups from this region that all had, and it was like Ikarian stew. Like, that's not a descriptive enough title. So not having index and then not having titles that really worked for finding recipes. If you're like me, and I tend to I tend to like browse a cookbook and like look at all the recipes and look at all the things I could do before I commit to making anything, and I like doing it that way. I like just like looking at everything and being like, wow, what calls to me first? What do I want to do first? And then to not have an index to go back and look at all these recipes was kind of a problem. Even if by ingredients, a lot of cookbooks that I love using will have ingredients listed at the back, and you can just, if I wanted to look for peas, I'd be like, okay, well, what had peas in it? And then there'd be a list of different things in this book that had peas, and that would have been really helpful, but it's an oversight, and I get it, there was definitely a lot of work that went into this book, and I guess he didn't think that'd be necessary, but it would have been really nice, and saved me a lot of time. And those are my biggest pros and cons, and now we can move into the 5 recipes I'm going to recommend from this book. I think if I'm doing cookbook reviews in the future, I haven't decided how I really want to do this, but I know I want to do a couple of recipes from the book and actually just like give them to you guys and share them with you guys, and you can see how you feel about them if it's something that you actually want to make. I don't want to break copyright laws, but also I'm not monetized, so they can't really take anything from me. For the time being, I'm just going to share recipes as I see fit. Top 5 recipes, I'm going to tell you what they are and what I liked about them, and I'll probably have like a Google link below where you can click to see the recipes. I'll probably have to type them out because I can't think of any other way to share them. There's a banana apple smoothie from Okinawa. Let me see if I can find it. Page 121. So there's no picture of it, so you're not missing much, but it's basically just super simple. It's got turmeric, which I didn't know. When I think of turmeric, I think of India and I think of curry and I think of all of that. I don't think of Japan as having turmeric in its foods. That was such a surprise for me. I'm glad I learned that because I love turmeric. So the ingredients for this, it calls for, it's a smoothie, so you understand that like you just put all this crap in a blender and blend it. It calls for a ripe banana, 1 apple, a teaspoon of turmeric, a cup of soy milk or any non-dairy milk. I don't think the type really matters. And then 5 cups of ice. I would just do this with a frozen banana, and I would probably pre-make this the night before next time and just do like frozen banana and apple, adding everything else as I go and skip the ice, because I feel like when you add ice to a smoothie, it helps to an extent, but then it just becomes water. That's not really what I like to go for. I like to go for like solid fruit. So this was really good. I can see it being like a dessert for me. I think it was meant to be a dessert for this. Typically I add a bunch of turbinado sugar to my smoothies to make it sweet. And by a bunch I mean like a tablespoon, which is a lot, but oh well. The next recipe I have for you is the Korean stew that I already kind of blurbed about. It's got peas, fennel, carrots, artichoke. Let me see if I can find it. I've never had fennel before. I've been wanting to try fennel for quite some time. I've just never gotten around to it. Yeah, so this was my problem. It goes into seasonal stews, and then it has summer stews and spring stews, and their names are very basic. So I'm gonna read you the ingredients here. It's got a sweet onion. I just used the whole onion. I didn't really specifically get a sweet onion. I just used any onion. And when I first made this, I made it during the storm when I didn't have access to a whole onion, so I probably used closer to a quarter of an onion. I like to onion up things. I love onion. And then the second time I made it, I used a full onion, and that added flavor for sure. 1 medium carrot. I did like 3 carrots because I love carrot. A tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil. 1.5 cups of water. Whenever a recipe calls for water, I just add broth. I don't ever add water to my soup because I feel like when you add water instead of just adding more broth, it takes away from some of the flavor, and why? And a cup of vegetable broth. So I think I did closer to like 4 cups of vegetable broth. 12 to 16 ounces of artichoke hearts. I ended up using 2 cans. Next time I'll definitely only use 1 can, but I was so excited that I added way too much, and then I had to add more broth to compensate for the fact that I added more vegetables, and that was a mistake. 1 large potato, scrubbed and cut into medium dice with the skin on. 1 leek chopped. Also have never had fresh leek. I've had dried leek, but fresh leek, wow, what a flavor profile. And then a pound of baby peas, fresh or frozen. I used frozen baby peas. A small bunch of fennel fronds. So that's like kind of like the dill looking tips of the fennel. I actually used the whole fennel. I diced up the bulb and added it with the onions when I sauteed it, and then saved the fronds for the very end. And then salt and pepper to taste. I also added some bacon to it because I happened to have bacon, and when the power was going out, like like I just had to use it, and the bacon like made it really good. It wasn't necessary, but it definitely added something, and I enjoyed it for that. The next recipe, I'm gonna go with the chia seed lemonade that I've kind of already shared. This recipe, it called for like 6 actual lemons, and I ended up using store-bought lemon juice concentrate, and that worked pretty well for me. I added some water and sugar and used the same amount, so I think 6 lemons is like 12 tablespoons, and I think 4 tablespoons is 1/4 of a cup, so I think I did like 3/4 of a cup of lemon juice, and then the water. I added monk fruit sugar instead of actual sugar because, again, I'm trying to minimize how much actual sugar I consume on my diet, and it worked out pretty great. It was really sweet, it was also still tart, and it had flavor, and I love the chia seeds. I still have some. Let me go get it. I'm gonna get it in a second. And those are the top 3 recipes that I have for you guys that I've made. I haven't made any of the sardinia recipes yet, and I haven't made any of the Loma Linda recipes because I felt like they were basic. So the sardinia recipes, I'm not too sure yet. I'm kind of like intimidated by them. They're complicated but also simple, but like Italian foods in general are just delicious without really having to put much effort into them. And I'm going to be trying a lot of those. So, you know, I might update this Google link or whatever format I have to share these recipes with you to add more. I guess I thought I had 5 that I was ready to share, but I guess it's only those 3 because that's all I wrote down. And I wanted to do 5 so I could give you 1 from each region that I really liked, but I only have 3 regions, and I'm sorry about that. So this has been my first cookbook review. If you are interested in cooking and you love cooking as much as I do, even if you're just trying to figure out how to cook and you're trying to get into good cookbooks or good ways to learn about cooking and foods, I would say if you're learning to cook, this probably isn't the great introductory cookbook for you. But if you're more trying to incorporate new ingredients and new foods and new recipes and ways to try new things with flavor that will actually turn out good, this is a good book for you. And I would also say this is a good gift. If someone gifted me this book, I'd be pretty happy. It's like, I don't really want to own cookbooks because once you make the recipes and you know how to make them, you don't have to hold on to the cookbooks. You can just give them back or give them to someone else or just spread them. You don't have to open up a book every time to come to a recipe if you've written it down, if you've made it a few times. I know people who love to have cookbooks, and if you gifted them one like this, they would love it. It's great. Thank you for joining me. Light and love.
I thought I needed to run and find somebody to love, but all I needed was some coconut oil. Don't worry about the small things, I know I can do all things. Mama always told me it would be alright.
Josh.
Yeah.
I'm recording, so don't come out here.
Okay.
Or don't talk to me, I guess. But when I was looking, so the problem, no, I'll get into that when I get to the cons. I don't want to say it now. Ow. Cold consort. Oh, my knee. Oh. Everything pops.